What? Um, Fun. Okay, there's nothing fun here though. Uh, let's hope for this question there is something fun. So looking at the first one, you're given a hyperbola and an exponential. So you're also given a point, and then okay, first question is to get the value of a. For the value of a, you're given a point, so this is just substitution, right? So you have g at x being equal to negative a exponent x. So the value of y, it's negative 3, then the one of x is a positive 1. So this gives a to be equal to 1. Then for the second one, asymptotes. The asymptotes of the hyperbola, right? So we have the vertical asymptote as well as the horizontal asymptote. The vertical one is the values of x. So this is what you do. You're gonna say x is equal to negative 3, and then for the horizontal, you have y being equal to negative 1. So this is how we obtained the asymptotes. Normally, you have y being equal to a all over x minus p plus q. For the asymptotes, vertical asymptote, this is what we take. Then we say x minus p is equal to 0. So x is going to be equal to a different sign of p. Example is what we had there. We had, let us say I have 4y equals 4 over x plus 1 minus 8. The vertical asymptote is going to be equal to x plus 1 equal to 0, which is x equal to a negative 1. That is for the vertical. And then for the horizontal, it doesn't change. Horizontal asymptote, y is going to be equal to q. Good. Now, going back to the question. If I want to calculate the range is pretty simple. The range for g, I'm going to look at my function g of x because I've calculated the value of a. G of x is equal to a negative 3 exponent x. So remember something, the negative tells me if the function is above or below the asymptote. So if it's negative, then it's going to be below the asymptote. So this is the shape that I have. I have something like this. Y is equal to negative 3 exponent x. So this is from y is equals to negative a. Do this. A b exponent x plus q. Right? This is from this function. So if I have something like this, if a is greater than 0, the graph is going to be above the asymptote. Then if a is less than 0, then it's below. Then b will tell me other stuff. So if I look at this function, I'm having an asymptote. My asymptote is 0. My asymptote is 0. So y is equal to 0. Here's the x-axis. Here's the y-axis. So x is equal to 0. So my asymptote is here. Right, which is the asymptote. That is where y is equal to q. So in this case, we have q. Here is q. Right, so The function is a decreasing function. This is what I'm going to have below the asymptote. So the range, it's determined by the asymptote 2. So y must be less than q. What is the value of q? Q is 0 in the equation. So here, my range is going to be y must be less than 0, right? That's where it exists. Then the x and y intercepts, these are walk in a park. X-intercept, value of y equals 0 for f. So here is f here. So I have 0 being equal to -3 all over x plus 3 minus 1. So I have 1 being equal to -3 over x plus 3. This is just general algebra. X plus 3 equals -3, cross multiplication. So therefore, x is going to be a -6. So I have -6 to 0, that's the x-intercept. And then y-intercept. The y-intercept. Y-intercept, x equals 0. So y is going to be equal to -3. Then I have 0 plus 3 minus 1. So it's -1 and -1, so I have -2. Therefore, you have 0 is to -2. That is it for the intercept. Now, going to the fifth question. Ah la la. During the sketch, a free 6 marks. Free 6 marks. So both G and X on the same set of X's. So you have G. We'll start with G. When you sketch, it's always advisable to start with the asymptotes, right? So what I'm gonna do, just going to have these information here because it's going to be useful. And this one too. This is useful information for me. Okay, so I'll start with the asymptotes. The asymptotes for G. Asymptotes for G, you had y is equal to -3 exponent x. Asymptote is 0. So we won't touch this line. And then the x-intercept. We don't have an x-intercept because of the x-intercept is here. It won't cut the x-axis because of the asymptote. It's y is equal to 0. So I'm gonna calculate the x-intercept. X-intercept, y is not the x-intercept, the y. X equals 0. This is going to give me a -1. So here it's going to be a -1. Then I'll have my function. There is my function there. Then I have focus on G now. Get into G, we have the asymptotes. Y is equal to -1. Y equals -1. The vertical asymptote 3. -3. Okay. And then I have a point. The point which is negative 6 and 0. Negative 6 and 0. So going to negative 6 and 0. Negative 6, negative 6 and 0. And then I have negative 2 and 0. 0 is to negative 2, which is here, negative 2. So it's very important for me to know this thing. For the hyperbola, for the hyperbola, y is equal to a over x minus p plus q. If a is greater than 0, then you're gonna have then if a is less than 0, this is what you're gonna have, right? So you have the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. First, third, second, third, then the fourth. So if a is going to be, if you look at this function here, look at this function here, you have this here, and you have, it's not touching the asymptote. It's not touching the asymptote. So this is f, and the blue one is g. If you can look at, it's an increasing function, because when you move from left to right, the values of y are increasing. What I'm simply saying is, if you have a positive, your function goes this way. It's in the first and the third. If we have a positive a, positive, then if you have negative function, it's going to be increasing. Then here it's decreasing due to a. Here's an example. An example, it can be y is equal to 2 all over x, right? Or y is equal to 10 over x minus 4 plus 3. Right, it doesn't matter as long as a, and this is the shape. A tells us the shape, the quadrants, in fact. Y is equal to negative 3 over x plus 1 minus 3 into. So this sign tells us about the quadrants. Always remember that. And then getting back here, determine the axis of symmetry of f with a positive gradient. So axis of symmetry. Let's get to the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry. For axis of symmetry, we have two, right? We have one with positive, or increasing gradient. Then we have another one with a negative, right? Or decreasing gradient. For the positive gradient, this is from y is equal to a over x minus p plus q. What you do for the positive gradient, right? This is what you do. You take this whole thing here for that equation, right? So it's going to be y is equal to positive 10 x minus p plus q. And then here, the negative is y is equal to a negative. Then you're going to have x minus p plus Q. What that means is we have our example here, right? Our example, it's y is equal to negative 3x plus 3 minus 1. So that's what we take here. We take everything here for the positive gradient. So y is going to be equal to positive x plus 3 minus 1. So which is equal to x plus 2. That is my final answer. If it was for a negative gradient, I was going to say y is equal to negative x plus 3 minus 1, which this is going to give me negative x minus 4. Because if the x affects that and that. Same thing here. So going to our equation. Right, the graph is a bit off. To our equation. So for number 6, the answer here so 5.6. The answer here, y is equal to x at negative 3 all over x plus 3 minus 1. That is f of x. So my answer, y is equals to x plus 2. That's the asymptote. Okay, given that h of x is equal to f of x plus b, determine the value of b such that the range of f is not equal to 0. The range for, okay, I want to explain something. Range for the hyperbola. Let's look at the range. Range for y is equal to a over x minus p plus q. Range talks about the y values. So if doesn't even matter, it doesn't have any condition. Y is element of real numbers. And then y, it's not equal to the asymptote, right? Q being the asymptote. That is the range. And then if we look at the question here, our question here, you have an asymptote, right? You have an asymptote. So they want us to shift the function because b, it's a shift, right? Such that the range of f is y is not equal to 0. Right now, y for f of x range, y is not equal to negative 1. So if I want to add something to make y be equal to 0, because q, here's q, here is q, here is q, q is negative 1. So for me to add something and make it 0, I need to add 1. Do you understand? So 1 is going to be the value of b. So therefore 5.7, right? B is going to be equal to a positive 1.